Have you ever pondered on the intersection of LGBTQ plus identities and indigenous cultures? It's a topic that often goes unexplored, yet it's a rich tapestry of history, culture, and identity that deserves our attention. Today, we're taking a deep dive into this intersection, tracing the threads of LGBTQ plus identities within indigenous cultures across the globe. You might be wondering, why focus on this intersection? Well, the answer lies in the complex and vibrant histories of indigenous cultures. They have for centuries recognized and celebrated diverse expressions of gender and sexuality. These expressions, often overlooked in mainstream narratives, are an integral part of the cultural fabric of many indigenous societies. Take, for instance, the two-spirit identity in many Native American cultures, or the Fa'afafine in Samoa, both of which encompass a range of gender and sexual identities that go beyond the binary definitions. These identities, deeply rooted in their respective cultures, challenge our modern understanding of LGBTQ plus identities. They remind us that the diversity of human experiences is not a recent phenomenon, but a timeless truth. The aim of our exploration is not just to understand these identities, but also to appreciate the rich cultural contexts in which they exist. We'll trace the evolution of these identities, from their pre-colonial roots to their modern-day interpretations, investigating the impacts of colonialism, globalization, and the ongoing fight for LGBTQ+ rights. In this journey, we'll also recognize the resilience and resistance of indigenous LGBTQ+ individuals and communities. They have, against numerous challenges, held on to their identities and in doing so have preserved an essential part of human history and culture. This exploration is a step towards acknowledging and celebrating the diversity of human experiences. It's a step towards understanding our shared past, and in doing so, shaping a more inclusive and accepting future. Join us on this enlightening journey as we delve deeper into the fascinating world of LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures. To fully grasp this intersection, we must travel back to pre-colonial times. Back then, the world was a different place, a time when many indigenous cultures celebrated the diversity of human experience in ways that modern societies are only beginning to understand. In these societies, recognition and respect for diverse sexual orientations and gender identities were not exceptions, but rather integral aspects of their cultures. They understood that identity was not a binary concept, but a spectrum of possibilities. This understanding was often deeply woven into their spiritual beliefs, societal structures, and everyday life. Take, for instance, the concept of two-spirit people in Native American cultures. The term two-spirit is a modern pan-Indian term, but the underlying idea dates back centuries. It refers to individuals who embody both masculine and feminine spirits, often considered to hold a special, revered status within their tribes. Two-spirit people were seen as mediators, teachers, artists, and healers, their unique perspectives considered a gift that could bridge the gap between men and women, the physical and the spiritual. A two-spirit person might be a man living as a woman living as a man, or someone living outside traditional gender roles. They were not seen as anomalies, but as vital, respected members of their communities. The Zuni tribe of New Mexico, for example, had a rich tradition of recognizing and honoring lamana, individuals who combined male and female roles. Similarly, the Mojave people recognized aliha and huami, male and female-bodied individuals who lived as the opposite gender. These examples are but a glimpse into the rich tapestry of gender diversity and sexual orientation that existed in pre-colonial indigenous cultures. They show us that acceptance and respect for LGBTQ+ identities is not a modern invention, but a timeless human truth that has been recognized and honored in many cultures throughout history. Pre-colonial indigenous cultures were indeed ahead of their time, recognizing and honoring LGBTQ+ identities long before modern society. This understanding of the fluidity of gender and sexuality is a testament to their wisdom and acceptance, a legacy that continues to inspire and guide us today. However, the advent of colonialism drastically changed this acceptance. As we delve deeper into the narrative, we encounter a turning point that reshaped the dynamics of LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures. This change was brought about by colonialism, a period marked by the exploration, conquest, and settlement of non-European territories by European powers. Imagine societies with fluid gender identities and sexual norms, where acceptance and diversity were the norm. Now imagine these societies coming into contact with colonial powers, armed not just with physical might, but also with rigid gender binaries and stringent sexual norms. This collision of cultures led to a severe suppression and stigmatization of LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures. Colonial powers, with their Eurocentric ideologies, imposed their own binary understanding of gender and sexuality onto the indigenous cultures they colonized. This binary system, a stark contrast to the fluidity and acceptance that characterized many indigenous societies, sought to erase the diversity of sexual and gender identities that existed pre-colonially. LGBTQ+ identities, which had once been accepted, even respected, were now deemed unnatural and immoral. This stigmatization was enforced through laws, religious doctrines, and societal norms, leading to the marginalization of LGBTQ+ individuals within these societies. The impact of this colonial imposition was profound and far-reaching. It led to the erasure of LGBTQ+ identities from cultural narratives and historical records. It silenced voices and suppressed identities, creating a climate of fear and discrimination. This suppression was not just a denial of identity, but also a denial of human rights. Yet the resilience of these identities and cultures cannot be understated. Despite the weight of colonial oppression, LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures have persisted, quietly resisting erasure and fighting for recognition and acceptance. The legacy of colonialism continues to influence attitudes towards LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures today. It's a shadow that has been cast long and wide, a shadow we are still working to dispel. Colonialism, unfortunately, cast a long shadow over the acceptance of LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures. Scene script. Despite the challenges, indigenous cultures have been resilient, and a modern revival is underway. In the face of adversity, there's been a surge of resurgence in the contemporary recognition of LGBTQ+ identities within indigenous cultures. A revival that's not just about survival, but about the celebration of identity, diversity, and the rich tapestry of human experiences. This resurgence is a vibrant tapestry, interwoven with the threads of activism, education, and advocacy. Indigenous individuals and communities are stepping forward, taking back their narratives and reclaiming their spaces. They're making the world listen to their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. Central to this revival is the restoration of recognition and respect for LGBTQ+ identities. Indigenous cultures, in their myriad hues, are striving to re-establish the acceptance and honor that were once commonplace for LGBTQ+ individuals. They're resurrecting the traditions of their ancestors, where LGBTQ+ identities were not just accepted but revered and respected. This revival is not without its challenges, but these hurdles do not deter the communities. Instead, they fuel the fires of resilience. Activists, educators, and community leaders are tirelessly working to break down the barriers of prejudice and ignorance. They're educating their own communities and the world at large about the rich diversity of gender and sexual identities in their cultures. They're also advocating for the rights and recognition of indigenous LGBTQ+ individuals within legal and societal frameworks. This involves lobbying for laws that protect these individuals from discrimination and violence, and campaigning for their representation in the media, politics, and other public spheres. This modern revival is not a solitary endeavor. It's a collective effort, a shared journey. Indigenous communities are banding together, forming alliances with LGBTQ+ organizations and other social justice movements. They're leaning on each other's strengths, learning from each other's experiences, and lifting each other up. This revival is a testament to the strength and resilience of indigenous cultures and their LGBTQ+ members. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. And in doing so, they're rewriting the narrative for future generations. They're showing the world that their cultures, their identities, and their voices matter. And they're doing it with courage, tenacity, and an unyielding spirit of resilience. Looking ahead, what does the future hold for LGBTQ+ identities within Indigenous cultures? As we gaze into the horizon, we see a future filled with possibilities, yet also fraught with challenges. The potential for greater acceptance and inclusion for LGBTQ+ people within Indigenous cultures is certainly on the rise. There is an increasing recognition of two-spirit and other non-binary identities, which is a hopeful sign. However, it's important to remember that this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. Each Indigenous culture has its own unique history, traditions, and attitudes towards gender and sexuality. For some, the road to acceptance might be relatively smooth. For others, it may be filled with twists and turns. This journey is also influenced by the larger societal context. As we move forward, we must continue to challenge heteronormative ideals and push for greater inclusion and acceptance of all identities. It's a fight against centuries-old biases and prejudices, and it's not going to be easy. But, as history has shown us, change is possible. In this video, we've explored the intersection of LGBTQ+ and Indigenous cultures from the pre-colonial era to the present day. We've seen how colonialism attempted to erase non-binary identities and how these identities have been reclaimed and revived in the modern era. These stories remind us of the resilience and strength of LGBTQ+ Indigenous people. They also highlight the importance of acknowledging and respecting the diversity of gender and sexual identities within Indigenous cultures. The key takeaway from our exploration is this: the intersection of LGBTQ+ and Indigenous cultures is a complex, beautiful tapestry. Each thread adds to the richness of the whole, weaving together a story of resilience, identity, and diversity. As we continue to learn and grow, let's remember to celebrate this diversity and to respect and honor the unique identities of all people. Together, we can create a more inclusive and accepting world. The intersection of LGBTQ+ identities and Indigenous cultures is a rich, complex tapestry, one that we must continue to explore and understand. Thank you for joining us on this journey.